Hi, I'm Jeff Richards. Welcome to Japan Today Spotlight. In December, a government official who advises the Prime Minister, Sanai Takeichi, on security issues told reporters that he thinks Japan needs nuclear weapons. Now, the official wasn't named for obvious reasons, but the comment reopened an old and very uncomfortable debate. The remarks triggered a very swift backlash from China and North Korea, both of whom already have nuclear weapons. Should Japan, the only country in the world ever hit by atomic bombs, develop its own nuclear arsenal? Or should it stick to its long-held three non-nuclear principles? This week on Japan Today Spotlight, we're going to look at where Japan's government stands, how other countries are reacting to this, and what atomic bomb survivors and anti-nuclear campaigners are saying now. What are the three non-nuclear principles? Japan's three non-nuclear principles state the nation shall not possess, manufacture, or permit the introduction of nuclear weapons onto its territory. These principles were first declared in the Diet in 1967 by then Prime Minister Eisaku Sato. Sato later won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1974 for the declaration and his contributions to peace. Public opinion in Japan strongly supports these principles. An Asahi Shimbun newspaper survey in February 2025 found that 69% of respondents supported maintaining Japan's non-nuclear principles. That support reflects deeper anti-nuclear sentiment, and it's rooted in the World War II atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, obviously. Japan's non-nuclear stance is also tied to its reliance on the US and its nuclear umbrella for security. Now, some critics argue that relying on this US nuclear deterrence already contradicts the non-nuclear principles. This is because the United States has long followed a policy of neither confirming nor denying whether its ships carry nuclear weapons. Don't ask, don't tell. During the Cold War, US aircraft carriers routinely entered Japan. This led many experts to believe that nuclear weapons may have already been brought into the country, even if it was never officially acknowledged. So let's go back to the beginning. What were the comments made by this unnamed official in December? He said, and I quote, "In the end, we must rely on ourselves for defense, but having nuclear weapons isn't something that can be done quickly, like just going to a convenience store to buy something." The next day, Chief Cabinet Secretary Minoru Kihara responded. He emphasized that Japan's position hasn't changed. He said Japan still has a mission to lead efforts toward a nuclear-free world, so such weapons are never used again. But views inside the government aren't unified. Prime Minister Takeichi herself has made some ambiguous statements in the past. In November, less than a month after becoming Prime Minister, she told the Diet that she couldn't say for sure whether the three non-nuclear principles would be maintained in an upcoming revision to Japan's security strategy. She added that, for now, the government still adheres to them as a policy guideline. She wrote a book in 2024 called Kokuryoku Kenkyu, National Strength Research. Takeichi described the principles as unrealistic. She wrote that the United States may need to bring nuclear weapons into Japan to deter aggression from other countries. Some lawmakers within Takeichi's ruling Liberal Democratic Party have said the US should definitely be allowed to bring nuclear weapons into Japan. The LDP's coalition partner, the Japan Innovation Party, has also said that Japan needs to reconsider these three principles. Current Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi is open to the idea. He told a news conference that to protect people's lives, it's only natural that Japan shouldn't exclude any of the options on the table. Itsunori Onodera, head of the LDP's Security Research Council, said on a TV program that Japan needs to debate the future of its non-nuclear principles. So what are people saying overseas? Well, Japan's relationship with China has been worsening since Prime Minister Takaichi said in November that Japan might respond to military force if China invaded Taiwan. After that December remark by the government official we mentioned at the top of the show, Beijing condemned any talk of a Japanese nuclear weapons program. It labeled Japan a troublemaker and accused it of ignoring its militaristic past. In North Korea, which has been testing its long-range missile capabilities, the Institute for Japan Studies made a similar claim. It said Tokyo is seeking to arm itself with nuclear weapons behind the scenes while publicly advocating for a nuclear-free world. The Institute added that calls for nuclear weapons in Japanese political circles show what it described as Japan's bellicose and aggressive nature. The U.S. State Department reiterated that Japan is a global leader in promoting nuclear non-proliferation. It also said that the U.S. will maintain what it calls the world's most robust, credible, and modern nuclear deterrent to protect America and its allies, including Japan. Many American analysts believe the U.S. doesn't want Japan to possess nuclear weapons. Such a move would significantly alter the security balance in the region. One point that hasn't gotten much attention is whether Japan could actually make nuclear weapons, or even, if they did, could they afford to? Experts say developing nuclear weapons takes time, of course, but Japan's civilian nuclear energy program already produces weapons-grade uranium and plutonium through its fuel cycles. These are the key materials that are used in nuclear weapons. Maintaining a nuclear weapons program would also be expensive. Given Japan's massive public debt and other economic challenges, that money could be spent elsewhere. There's another issue. Japan doesn't have enough scientists dedicated to nuclear weapons development. And then there's, well, a pragmatic, practical question. Where would Japan even conduct nuclear tests? Hiroki Sugita, a professor at Meiji University and the author of a book on the history of Japan's nuclear weapons policy, says Japan gains nothing by talking about nuclear weapons. An independent nuclear arsenal is a pipe dream for those ignorant of the realities facing Japan and the world. It would require staggering national resources. Spending a huge portion of the national budget to develop a substantial nuclear arsenal is unrealistic for a country that's already struggling to raise its defense spending to 2% of gross domestic product. For now, Japan is unlikely to proceed with building nuclear weapons. First, the three non-nuclear principles would have to be overturned by legislation in the Diet, and that's unlikely, given that nearly 70% of the public opposes nuclear weapons. Second, Article 9, the pacifist clause of Japan's constitution, it renounces aggression as a tool of foreign policy, so that too would have to be changed. In the long term, though, it's not really out of the question. Japan has seen a rise in far-right and nationalistic views. Japanese pacifism is slowly eroding as those who lived through the atomic bombings pass away. And Article 9 is no longer untouchable. In 2022, Japan adopted a new security guideline, giving the self-defense forces first strike capability as part of its defense strategy. That marked a major shift in post-war policy. Even without building nuclear weapons, the debate itself and the reliance on nuclear deterrence is changing the optics of Japan's long-held anti-nuclear stance. These changes are reshaping how Japan looks from the outside. That's something that Japanese officials are well aware of. Opposition remains fierce, and that strongest opposition to Japan having nuclear weapons comes from within, from survivors of the 1945 atomic bombings. Known as hibakusha, they've campaigned tirelessly for 80 years. The group Nihon Hidankyo received the Nobel Peace Prize in 2024. They've criticized successive Japanese governments for not signing the United Nations Treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. Japan has repeatedly called for a global ban on nuclear weapons, yet it sides with nuclear powers and NATO in refusing to sign a treaty banning them. Why is that? Well, as a close U.S. ally, Japan is protected by America's extended nuclear deterrence. Because of that, it can't sign the treaty. Nihon Hidankyo stresses that atomic bomb survivors can't allow weapons to be brought into Japan. They don't want the country to become a base for nuclear war or a target of a nuclear attack. Hibakusha are backed by the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, or ICAN. ICAN also won the Nobel Peace Prize back in 2017. ICAN Executive Director Melissa Park says her group is deeply concerned about any review of Japan's non-nuclear principles. She says atomic bomb survivors have played a critical role in telling the world what happened under the mushroom cloud. She argues that testimony has been far more effective than the unproven theory of nuclear deterrence. In an interview with Japanese media, she said, "With nuclear tensions in East Asia and around the world at their highest since the Cold War, and possibly ever, now isn't the time to weaken Japan's opposition to producing, possessing, or introducing nuclear weapons." In February, the New START Treaty, the last remaining agreement limiting U.S. and Russian nuclear arsenals, it's going to expire. While both sides have largely stayed within the limits, inspections and verification have already broken down. Will that be used as justification for a new global nuclear arms race? Right now, there are 9 countries in the world with nuclear weapons. Will Japan begin moving toward becoming number 10? From the Japan Today newsroom in Tokyo, I'm Jeff Richards. See me next time.